Evening. I'm Brian Lewis, and thank you for taking some time out of your schedule to attend tonight's webinar. This is going to be the first of two parts dealing with membership recruitment and retention. For tonight's webinar, I'm going to do a bit of an overview, look at the Indiana Grand Commandery Membership Committee's plan, and then dive into recruitment. Part 2, which will be in September, will discuss ideas for activities, retention, and better communications. If you have any questions as I'm going through this presentation, please type those into the chat and I'll go through those at the end. If you're watching the recording of this presentation, please type your questions into the comments below so I can look at those and so we can cover them in future videos. I ordinarily dislike introductions, but real quick, let me tell you a little bit about myself and why what I have to say on membership is worth listening to. I work for Rayborn Group International, which is an association management company. And what that means is that we are the professional staff for nonprofit organizations that have members and volunteers. Groups that are very similar to Masonic groups, except instead of being fraternities, the majority of our clients are organizations that serve a profession. For example, I run a group of environmental consultants and a group of professional land surveyors. I'm a certified association executive, and what that means is I've been doing this for a while. I've gone through a whole lot of continuing education, and I passed a really big test to prove that I learned something from all that. When I started down this career path, it was as a membership specialist, and I've always worked with and been very interested in this subject. So putting together these papers and these presentations has been a lot of fun, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to share all this information with you tonight. While I do have a lot of experience dealing with membership issues, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to give you the answer to solve all your membership problems, and simply because there just isn't one answer. When we're talking about membership, we're talking about selling something that it's not a product, it's kind of a service. It's a combination of self-improvement, a cause, the promotion of an idea. Specifically in our case, we're talking about a paternal experience and a sense of belonging to something that's bigger than ourselves. And while this has value, it's difficult to quantify that value. And when we tell somebody about who we are and what we do, the way that message resonates to any individual is going to vary a lot from person to person. How people react to that message is always going to change, and it's even going to change as our society changes. So there isn't just one sales pitch that's always going to appeal to everyone. We've got to continually adjust our messaging. And so, unfortunately, there isn't any one definite solution. However, what I do know is that what we're doing right now just is not working. While where we were in the 50s is an unrealistic expectation to get back to, 60 years of membership decline is a bit of a much of a correction. We don't need to get back to those lofty numbers, but it is about time that we turn the corner and that we begin to start growing again. Since what we're doing right now isn't working, what we're going to need to do is try new things and new ways to recruit, retain, and engage our members. One concern that I have is that present-day Masonry is missing a culture of innovation and experimentation that is really necessary to adapt to a evolving society, a society that is changing at a quicker pace. Sometimes I think we're failing because we're so afraid to fail that we won't even risk trying something new. While I'll go into it more during part 2, I think it's important for everyone to think about the total membership experience. What is it that is attractive, that draws people to become Masons and draws Masons to become Yorkite Masons? What do our members enjoy that brings them back? What do they not like that is driving them away? We have to preserve who we are, but we also have to adapt how we deliver our ideals and our membership experience so that we're able to survive and thrive for future generations. In the description for this video, you're going to find links to two documents. The goal for membership recruitment, at least for a Yorkite, needs to be 8 new members a year. The statistical analysis will explain to you how I came up with that number. If you haven't read it, I'd encourage you to do so after this webinar, especially if you like numbers and statistics and that kind of fun stuff. 8 members a year would also work statistically for a Blue Lodge, except they'd also have to be able to pay their bills with 80 to 120 members. So that financial component is something that needs to also be kept in mind. Now, the main theme for the memberships committee plan is not to tell everyone exactly what they need to do, but rather to encourage everyone to try something new, something different, something that fits their individual Yorkite's culture and situation. Since there isn't one solution that is going to work for everybody, all the membership committee is really asking from each of the commanderies is to try a couple new recruitment activities and try a couple new retention activities. And then once you've tried those, share with us what you did, along with some feedback on what worked and what didn't work, and why you think it didn't work and why you think it did work. One of the tasks for the membership committee is to pull all the ideas that all the commanderies come up with along with their feedback and put that all together and share it back out again so we can learn from each other's experiences. The committee is also going to do membership development training, which is why we have a webinar tonight for everybody to view. This plan, in essence, is really simple. It's also a plan that'll work for just about any organization. Times and mindsets change, so what has worked for us in the past is likely to stop working, and new ideas are going to be needed to keep attracting more members. And what we really need is to keep trying new things, experiment. Let's not be afraid of failure. If it doesn't work, let's figure out why. Let's learn from it. If it does work, great. Let's keep improving on it and let's do it some more. If we keep doing a couple new things every year, continue what works, trying to improve on what didn't, keep building on that, then our membership development will keep getting better and better. Success is a journey. It's not a destination. So we can't be complacent. We can't ever feel like we have the solution, we're there. But rather, we have to just keep striving to improve every year a little bit better than the last year, and so we keep moving in a positive direction. Now, this here is just my thought, but I wanted to share it because it does influence a lot of my own views on membership. I don't think our goal should be get back where we used to be, but rather what I believe is that our goal needs to be to provide a membership experience that is meaningful, enjoyable, and is sustainable. Masonry is not just a social club. We say our goal is to make good men better, that we value building the character of our members, that is important to us to improve society at large. If we're going to live up to that, then there needs to be some meaning behind what we do. But it must be fun. There is just too much competition for people's time right now. If we can't make what we do enjoyable, they're going to find other things to do. And whatever we do, we have to keep the future in mind so that we're building our organization so that it's still around for future generations to enjoy and benefit from. We do need to change, we have to adapt, but we do have to be careful that our efforts are sustainable and that we aren't being short-sighted when we make changes. So, I've already mentioned the membership experience because while I think membership recruitment is vitally important, I don't want us to lose sight of the overall membership experience because that's what we really need to focus on. If we don't bring in new members, the experience will get stale and it'll get routine. We'll burn people out as they have to assume more and more of the volunteer duties, and we will limit what we're able to accomplish. But we're not recruiting people just for numbers. We're recruiting to improve the experience, to increase what we're able to do. So when we're out there recruiting, we need to think about the experience we're providing to our members and how we can keep improving upon it. So all right, let's start digging into recruitment. There are a couple basic questions that need to be answered before you start developing your membership recruitment plan. Now, the answers to this are going to vary a bit from York Rite to York Rite, but they're probably going to be similar. But they may not be exactly the same depending on your York Rite's activities and the kind of experience you're providing to your members. In general, our primary prospects are going to be Master Masons. And while there's a couple different ways to get in front of them, you're probably going to find them at their Blue Lodge. So we're going to start by looking at opportunities to visit lodges so we can provide information on what the York Rite is and how they can join. So let's start by identifying nearby lodges. Now, this part is going to be very Indiana specific. However, before Indiana had these online resources, we had PDF directories. And before we had the PDF directories, we had spiral-bound directories. And we've always had a list of lodges in our annual proceedings. So no matter what state you're from, somewhere, somehow, with a little effort, you will be able to figure out what lodges are near you. Now, if you're in Indiana, the Grand Lodge has some great resources for us. There are two links here. One of them is the public link, and one of them is the member only. You're going to have to log into the back end to get to it. Both of these links will let you search for lodges within a however many mile radius you would like from a zip code. So you can type the zip code of your York Rite in there, click 20, 30 mile radius, click search, and you'll get a full list of all the lodges in your area. I would make a documented list of that and start thinking individually about which ones you visited, which ones you have members from, how you can begin to visit, how you can get into those lodges. Now, the question may be, how far away should you go? And that depends. Based on typical recruitment rates, you're going to need a pool of about 800 to 1,200 Masons within the lodges you're recruiting from. Now, the Grand Lodge proceedings are going to tell you how many members are in each lodge. So you can kind of start checking off at what point you've got that 1,200 member pool. I think a lot of times we think of the York Rite as a very local organization drawing from one or two lodges, our host, and maybe a couple others. But other groups like the Scottish Rite have been able to recruit from multi-county areas. I mean, in Indianapolis, our valley draws from this huge swath in the middle of the state. I think it's not as much the distance. I think it's what experience you're able to provide your members, whether they're willing to come from further away. I live 30 miles away from my York Rite, and I have to drive through horrendous Indianapolis traffic to get there. But I enjoy my experience a great deal, and it's worth it, and so I go pretty much every week. And so if you give a good experience, you can get people to come from outside your county to join and participate in your York Rite. But again, it's that member experience that's going to be key to being able to do that. All right, so you've made a list, you've identified all the lodges that are nearby and the ones that you're going to try to recruit members from. So now what? Well, now we need to go visit them. There are three goals, basically. We need to let people know about the York Rite. We need to give them a reason to join, and we need to make sure they know how to join the York Rite. They're not going to join something they don't know anything about. So the first step is we just have to educate people on what the York Rite is. Unfortunately, and we say this a lot, we are the best kept secret in Freemasonry, and that is not a compliment. We don't want to be a secret. We want people to know who we are. So at least they'll consider becoming a member. Now, once they know who we are, we still have to sell them on the value of becoming a member, what we offer, and why they need to go through the York Rite degrees and become a member. And once they decide that they're ready, they want to join the York Rite, we've got to make it easy for them. If they don't know how to petition, if they can't find a petition, if they don't know who to turn the petition into, they'll probably just get frustrated and they probably will just not join. Now, there's a bunch of ways we can interact with lodges, and this is where you have to know who you're working with, and if you don't know who you're working with, you've got to start to get to know them, because every lodge has a different culture, and how we interact with each lodge needs to vary depending on that. Our lodge interactions can include anything from just trying to get materials into the lodges like brochures, just attending lodge meetings, just getting to know their members and having them get to know us, or doing something more like a formal York Rite presentation. One very efficient way to recruit and educate Masons on the York Rite is to do Masonic education. If you have the opportunity to present on the York Rite, it's a great way to do recruitment, but there are a couple key messages that you need to make sure that you're including in any York Rite presentation. First off, you have to tell them why they should join, and then you have to tell them why they should be involved. Now, that sounds similar, but these are two different points. Why they should join usually involves something from the ritual or the initiation experience, or something they'll see in the degree work, or something they're missing because they've never seen that work. Why they should be an active member has more to do with what your York Rite does outside of the initiation process and that overall membership experience that you're providing. Now, if you can speak from your own experience, it will be a much more authentic presentation than if you recycle someone else's sales pitch. And you'll be able to speak much more passionately about the York Rite. So think in terms of, why did you join? What did you enjoy from the process? Why are you active? Why do you come back? And tell people that. If you have someone who is interested in becoming a York Rite Mason, make sure they know exactly how to keep the ball rolling. If they want more information, how do they get it? If they're ready for a petition, can you give them a petition? How do they fill out that petition and turn it in? One thing that's important is to think from the point of view of that new prospect and try to anticipate where they might find it difficult to reach somebody from the York Rite or find a petition, or where they may not know where to submit it or how to proceed from there. Also, make sure when you go to do a presentation that you're very familiar with that presentation and you can give it competently and smoothly. Pay attention to your audience, read the audience, be ready to cut short if you start losing their attention. Don't speak too long, but you got to make sure there are a couple compelling points that make them want to know more about the York Rite. If they come up to you after a presentation asking you questions, that is a great sign that you did a great job in sparking that interest. So here is where you can find an example to get yourself started. Go to the Grand Encampment webpage. Now, the address is up here. For some reason that I do not understand, it will not work for me unless I type membership all in caps. So make sure to type membership all in caps. Go to the very bottom of this page where you'll see Toolbox, and you'll see at the bottom in the middle, 3-minute drill PowerPoint. So this is the 3-minute drill that Carson Smith wrote. Carson is pushing 200 petitions right now. I think he's actually at like 165, but they keep coming in. So I can guarantee to you that this presentation does work. And I can also guarantee if you read it over, you'll get a lot of different ideas about things that you can say in a lodge about the York Rite. But it is important that whoever does the presentation and that whatever they present sounds natural and comfortable to them. So I'd encourage everyone to customize their own presentation. Look over what Carson's put together, get some ideas. Don't necessarily use this word for word. Adapt it and adjust it so when you're speaking it that you really believe what you're saying. This will give you a great start. But don't stop there. Think about your own experience. Again, why you joined, why you're active. The other thing I want to note about this is that it is called the 3-minute drill. Your presentation does not have to be long in order to be effective. Sometimes we want to talk about all of the York Rite and summarize all 9 of the degrees and orders and go into depth about everything we are and do. And I'm afraid people just do not have a long enough attention span for that. Sometimes we need to just keep it to the main points, get them interested so they'll ask us questions and go look for more information. Not everyone is going to be ready to make a decision right away. So it's important to consider what you can leave behind to provide them with further information. And I'm going to beat a dead horse here, but so often people are interested but have no way to reach out to the York Rite. They don't have a contact person, a phone number, an email, a website, a petition, nothing. Don't lose a candidate because they can't find a petition or they can't figure out how to turn it in. Leave them with something or even a couple somethings to keep that recruitment process moving even after you leave. You may not have anything ready or available right now. So, to get you started, the Grand Encampment has a brochure with more information on the commandery. These are very nice, they're very professionally done, and they should be available to you through your Grand Commandery's membership chair. In the case of Indiana, I know for a fact that Carson has them as the membership chair. And I know the Grand Recorder has some, and I know some of the battalion commanders have some. So if you need them, please ask for them. These are an excellent start. However, I would never just leave a Grand Encampment membership brochure behind. Not because they aren't good, because they're great, but because there isn't any follow-up or contact information specific to whoever's making the presentation. They're an outstanding resource, but when the prospect is ready to move forward, they need it to be able to find me, my York Rite. Going to the Grand Encampment site to find the Indiana Grand Commandery site to maybe find my York Rite site, that is way too many steps. We want to make this easy. So leave them with some sort of contact information. Business cards are cheap, so I suggest starting with those. But you can brainstorm all kinds of other things. My York Rite, we've done our own brochures. They did not look as good as what Grand Encampment has. They certainly didn't look as professional, but they did have the advantage that they were very specific on who we are and what we do, and there was certainly value in that, and there was definitely all our contact information. So if someone wanted to get back in touch with us, they had options, lots of options. The other good thing to leave behind are petitions. The Grand Encampment brochure has a membership inquiry form. That's great, but you might want them to fill out your own York Rite specific petition. Whatever you do, they can't join without filling out something, so you need to make sure that that is available to them. Make sure when you have petitions that there are a couple basic pieces of information on them. They need to know how to submit them and how to get in contact with you. They need to know what the initiation fees are. They need to know how they can pay them, who they make the checks payable to, all that kind of stuff. You don't want them to hit a road bump because they're missing a basic piece of information like they don't know how much the initiation fee is. The other thing is, once you get a petition filled out from a prospect, make sure you follow up with the candidate on what the process is of joining. The process really needs to be smooth so the prospect doesn't get stuck somewhere because they're missing information. It also needs to be transparent so they know where they are in the process and when they can expect to join and when they can expect to receive degrees and orders and that kind of stuff. It's really poor customer service for them to go months without hearing from you and not having a clue when they'll get their work. So make sure, even if it takes a while to get the degree work set up, make sure you're constantly in communication with them so they know what's going on and they feel comfortable that when it's time to get degree work, someone is going to reach out to them and tell them when that has been scheduled. So what other things can we do? Well, instead of going to them, we can try to bring them to us. Now, the challenge is finding ways to get people to come to us. If you already have prospects who are interested in joining but haven't quite committed to filling out the petition yet, an open house works well to give them the information they need to just make that decision to join. I know of multiple Blue Lodges that have a lot of good success with open houses. The reason they work really well for Blue Lodges is they let members who may not be as comfortable explaining why someone would join. A lot of time they're their newer members. It allows those new members to bring prospects to the lodge and let someone who's more experienced, more comfortable, talk about masonry and explain to them what we're all about and why they should consider joining. This really, really does work well in turning your newest members into recruiters because they're the ones that are most likely to be able to identify prospects because they tend to know more people who aren't members. And it helps them out by getting over their lack of comfort with explaining the organization. It gets your experienced members involved in assisting them. It also works really great for Blue Lodges because it's a lot harder for them to identify places where they can go to get in front of prospects. The York Rite has the advantage that we can find places to get in front of them. That doesn't mean there's no value, though, to York Rites in doing an open house. They just don't necessarily solve all our problems because we still have the problem of getting the word out, inviting people, and getting them to show up. So, if you're going to host a York Rite open house, you absolutely must get your members, and especially your newest members, to be very, very active in promoting and inviting people to attend. At Prather York Rite, we have done an open house, I'm thinking, for about 10 years now. It is the annual dessert buffet and open house, And it is what it sounds like. It is a dessert buffet where we have all of our members bring some sort of dessert item. The York Rite owns a chocolate fountain, and we pay to have chocolate and stuff to dip in it. And we invite everybody to come out, and we advertise it fairly heavily. That being said, I think over 10 years, if we've gotten 10 candidates from it, I'd be surprised. If we're lucky, we probably average one a year. I know we got one this year, but I don't think we got one last year, and kind of up and down. It's a great event. Our members love it. There are members that come to this that don't come to anything else, so we're not going to stop doing it. But this is not the focal point of our recruitment plan. It's just a nice little additional thing we do, and we might pick up a prospect or two, and that's great. So, if you're going to do an open house, you really need to think about, what is this event going to look like? What's the focus going to be? Are you going to have a dinner, you going to have food, or you just going to have dessert, appetizers? What type of program is it going to have? Those are the kind of things that may or may not draw someone in and have them show up to the lodge to listen to what you have to say. The other thing you need to think about is, once you get someone there, how are you going to talk to them about the York Rite? Is it going to be a formal presentation? If so, what's going to be presented? How are you going to do that? Who's going to do it? How is it all going to be done? If it's informal, who's going to be responsible to talking to prospects and making sure that all this key information is communicated to them? How are you going to make sure that someone isn't just going to show up and nobody's going to interact or talk to them or greet them? You've got to make sure that whatever you do, the experience for the prospect is positive. Because from the time he arrives at the lodge, his view of the York Rite is going to be based on his experience at that event. So it's very important that whatever you do, you make sure he enjoys himself, and you consider, what will he learn? What will be said to him that will encourage him to come back to the York Rite? Will he be provided with enough information to consider making that decision on whether to petition or not? Will somebody give him a hard sale, and will he feel turned off because he's feeling like he's being pressured? Think about that experience from the guest's point of view. During next month's webinar, I'll discuss activities and social events in terms of member retention and the member experience. But when we're talking about recruitment, we want to make sure that we're not missing out on an opportunity to leverage what we're already doing to help us with our recruitment efforts. If you're doing fun stuff and you can get a prospect to attend, they're going to be more interested in becoming a member because they've enjoyed something that you're doing. The reality is, if they don't establish a positive connection with some of your active members, they probably aren't going to come back once they join anyway. Sometimes those positive connections are formed during the initiation process. Sometimes they already have a connection with some of your members. Likely it's the person that got them to petition in the first place. But the more opportunities you give them to meet your members, get to know those members, hopefully they'll like your members. If they form those connections, it gets a whole lot easier to encourage them to come back and to participate once they've made the decision to join. Now, obviously, not every event you host is going to be appropriate for prospects. So think about whether inviting non-members to whatever function it is a good idea. If you're going to have guests, those guests are going to form an opinion of your organization based on that event. If you're not confident about having a quality event, do not invite prospects. Maybe the first time you run something might not be the best time to invite guests. Maybe you need to work the bugs out first and invite people the second time around. And very similar to an open house, if you have prospects, you have to make sure that they are going to have a good experience. Even if something goes wrong with the event, and unfortunately, no matter how hard we plan or how much attention we pay the details, sometimes things go wrong. That doesn't mean it's a total disaster, but you have to think in terms of the guest experience, how we interact with them, how we talk to them, and especially if things go wrong, you've got to put in some serious extra effort to make sure that that prospect doesn't feel like coming out was a waste of their time or there was nothing gained from it. Even if all that happens is they sit down and talk with one other person for a little while and get to know someone, that by itself can be a positive interaction, a positive experience. If they don't get even that, it's going to be a real challenge to get them to join afterwards. The other challenge that you're going to face, especially when we're talking about using social events, is that people aren't just going to show up. It can be difficult just to get our own members to come to events, let alone prospects. Personal invitations from active members or officers are always going to be the most effective. In sales in general, one-on-one is always the best. So whenever you're doing stuff like this, a concerted effort to get people to go out, talk about it, invite people, push people to attend, that is always going to be a positive. However, you can also spread the word via email, on social media. You can send the information about the event out to lodges. There's all kinds of things we can do from a marketing standpoint. The big key, though, is to have a plan for marketing your event and to put a little time and energy into really thinking about how people are going to learn about this event happening. One of the things I get frustrated about frequently is we'll come up with great ideas for events and then we'll try to throw them together within 2 weeks. And we seem to act like people's calendars won't already be full or they won't already have plans. And then we're shocked that we couldn't get the word out and get people to attend in 2 weeks' time. When I do marketing at work for any of my association events, I tell them all the time I need at least a 6-week marketing window, more if possible, because you can only send so many emails a week without burning people out. And so if I'm only going to send one email a week, I've got to get that message in front of them lots and lots of times. I'm pretty sure the marketing rule is for commercials is you have to get something in front of people 7 times for them to remember seeing it once. So how are you going to get in front of them 7 times? It is a real challenge. Last thing to think about with social events is to make sure that you're ready if the prospect is interested in learning more. So it's similar with lodge presentations. If they start asking you questions, are you ready to answer them? If they want further information, are you ready to give them some? If they're ready to join, do you have a petition ready, or do you have a way to help get the ball rolling? I'll be honest, I don't always have petitions with me. But we have a digital version of our petition online, so it's available at all times. I typically have some sort of business card on me at all times. So when they're ready for more information, I can give them a business card and I can say, you can find this info on our York Rite website and this information, and you can find a petition and all this. And if you have questions, here's how you contact us. It's all there, so there's a process for them to keep that ball rolling. So I'm just real quick going to touch on advertising because I'm going to go into a lot more depth about communication in the next webinar, and a lot of this is going to tie into it. I even consider not even talking about this because some of it can get really into the weeds, and you can spend a lot of time talking very specifically about Facebook advertising or Twitter advertising or any of that. And to be honest, this is the least effective of everything we're talking about. My York Rite, we have done quite a bit of advertising on social media, and we have gotten petitions from it. But I do not think that social media advertising is the key that is going to solve your recruitment problem by itself. And I do not think you will get a ton of petitions from us. We have gotten probably a small handful. What we have found helpful, and the reason we still invest money in doing it, is we have found that social media is helping us find candidates who either are not active in their lodge, they aren't a member of a lodge that we visit, or they're a Mason who may be new to town and they don't have a local lodge yet, but they want to get involved in something Masonic. And in all those cases, social media advertising has helped us get in front of people that we never would have gotten in front of doing lodge presentations. But again, it's just been a small number. It also gets into a lot of communication, member retention, member awareness kind of things because social media has really helped us become a more visible Masonic body. So people, not just prospects, but our own members are hearing from us on a more consistent basis, seeing what we're doing, seeing that we're doing things. And I think it's helping us much more from a member engagement, member retention standpoint than it is from a member recruitment standpoint. And I think that's important too, because even if we're not getting petitions from social media, it's a whole lot easier to recruit somebody if they've already read something about the York Rite, they know we exist, they've already know that this might be something they're interested in, they're just looking to know more. If the first time they've ever heard of the York Rite is when we go to make a presentation, it's a lot harder sell. It takes a while for people to really consider joining. And visibility for the York Rite is just a lot more challenging than a couple of the other Masonic bodies that have giant buildings in downtown and that kind of stuff. So while I could probably do a whole hour just on how to advertise on Facebook and Twitter, before doing any paid advertising, the other challenge is you really need to be active on that social media platform. You can go on Facebook, you can create a page, you can write an ad, and you can spend some money to get in front of people who aren't following your page, and so on. If there's no process for them to get in touch of you, if there's no follow-up, if there's no chain of information, it's just not going to succeed much. I really feel that before you even consider social media advertising, the first thing you need to do is have a website. Most people nowadays, when they want information, the first thing they do is Google it. Are you findable on Google? Is there anything about your York Rite that comes up if someone Googles you? Can people find accurate information about your York Rite, when you have meetings, how to contact you for more information, that kind of stuff? From a recruitment standpoint, I feel like your website is your bulletin board. And I know at least in Indiana that I'm guessing only 10, maybe 15% of York Rites have a website. And I'm not sure that everyone that has one is updated regularly. I think that's important, and I'm going to talk about that more on the next webinar when we get into retention and communication. But even from a recruitment standpoint, you need a digital bulletin board and billboard, and this is it. That's your website. Social media advertising is really a longer-term investment. So if you're going to spend hundreds of dollars to get one petition, which I think is pretty close to what we're spending, You need to have an infrastructure in place so they can get this information, get a hold of you. A lot of times you're advertising so you can get more Facebook followers. Well, what's that do? Well, it only does something if your Facebook page is posting stuff. Are you posting stuff that makes them interested in becoming a member? If you're not posting regularly or you're not posting stuff that is attractive to a prospect, then it's not moving them along towards wanting to be a member. And so if you don't have all that infrastructure in place, I'm not sure it's a good use of your money. Long term, I think in the situation I'm in with my York Rite, I feel like social media advertising to a certain extent is a good investment for us. But it's not the first place. We start when we're developing a recruitment plan, and I certainly don't think this is the key to getting us our recruitment goal for the year. It's a nice little addition that gets us a couple people that we might not have gotten otherwise. So, to quickly wrap up and summarize what I've talked about, the big one is we really need to try something different. There are a number of different things we can do, and if we can get more people working on this problem and more people willing to be a little innovative and try some new ideas, then hopefully we will come up with a bunch of different solutions on how to recruit more members. I think to get the ball rolling towards improving your York Rite's recruitment rate, I would say it's much easier to go to them than to try to get them to come to us. So I would encourage you that the first place you start is doing lodge visitations. Figure out the lodges that are in your area. See how you can partner with your local lodges. See what you can do, either, whether it's dropping information off, just getting to know them, or doing presentations, whatever that is. It's so much easier to go to them. Now, if you have members out there who are talking up the York Rite and they've got people they just can't close the deal on, then bringing them to you to close the sale, that will work well. Open houses are going to be most effective when you have your own members bringing people in and you're not relying on marketing to generate your crowd. If your plan is to do a big marketing campaign to bring a bunch of people to this open house, I think unfortunately you'll be very disappointed. We are all limited on the time we have to spend on anything, but masonry in particular. So multitasking your social events is efficient. This is another case where I don't think it's going to solve all your membership problems, but if you're doing fun stuff anyway, why not try to use them to pick up a couple more members? Besides, we need to be more visible and reachable anyway. So promoting our activities out in, I want to say the public, but we're really talking about within our lodges and the master masons in our area. This by itself, again, is not going to solve our problem, nor is social media advertising or participation on social media or having a website or any of that stuff. But all of it makes it a whole lot easier to recruit members because when they're able to find out more information about us independently, and when we make ourselves accessible so they can find us when they've decided they're interested, it makes the whole recruitment process a lot easier. All right, so this concludes the formal portion of my presentation. Please type any questions into the chat, and I'm going to go through those in just a second. If you're watching the video, type those comments in the comment section below, and I'll keep referring to those. Anything I don't get to tonight or anything gets typed in after tonight, I'm going to use to develop future webinars, so I appreciate that kind of feedback and just a feel for what questions people will have. This recording will be available on YouTube. This is the first time I've done YouTube streaming, so I think it's right away, but there may be a delay. It should be at this link, but I'll make sure to push that out. once it's up and ready. And lastly, just a quick reminder that part 2 will be on Thursday, September 19th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And in it, I'm going to go a lot more into communication things. So I've touched on websites and Twitter and Facebook, and I will go into that along with email and a few other things much more in depth, and then talk a little about activities and retention and that overall member experience that we need to be giving to our members. All right. Any questions or anything on here? I don't see any questions, so I am going to close this presentation for now. Like I said, please share, please comment below, and we'll get to other questions and comments during future presentations. Thank you, and good